On this edition of Independent Sources, in search of the Black Russians, the little-known story of the African Americans who sought refuge from oppression in Russia.
This is about ideals and the idealists and those people who believed really in a better life, and that's why they went.
And a sort of homecoming. The nation's leading Afro-Caribbean cultural center gets a major renovation and relocation.
Moving to 125th Street is extremely important because it places us back in the community that is our key community.
Those stories and more coming up on Independent Sources. Welcome to Independent Sources, bringing you news from New York's ethnic and immigrant communities. I'm Garry Pierre-Pierre. The story of Russian defectors seeking solace in the United States is so well known that it's even been portrayed in film. On the other hand, there hasn't been much coverage of the reverse migration that took place. Back in the 1930s, several African Americans sought refuge in Russia as a means of escaping lynchings and a Jim Crow system of segregation. Zyphus Lebrun sat down with Yelena Demikovsky to talk about her efforts to document the lives of these people and some of their descendants.
Yelena, thank you so very much for being with us in studio today.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
All right, so before we get started with our conversation, I wanted us to take a look at a clip that you provided us of some of the work you've been doing on this film, Black Russians.
Long live our Soviet motherland, built by the people's mighty hand. Long live.
This film is about dreams and dreamers, those who believed they and their families deserved a life better than lynching and segregation.
Long may our crimson flag inspire.
Выходила, песню заводила, про степного сизого орла, про того, которого любил.
The film brings the history up to date. The descendants reveal how these events have shaped their lives, how they were affected by the Cold War, the breakup of the Soviet Union and rising nationalism, and how this compares to the dreams of their parents and grandparents. We have three main characters. Mary Louise Patterson.
My parents had me after they'd had a number of adventures, one of which was they both separately went to the Soviet Union.
Yelena Hunger.
Мои бабушка и дедушка приехали в 28 году из Америки, из Нью-Йорка в Советский Союз. Они бежали от расизма.
And Wayland Rod.
Мой отец ехал сюда из Америки за своей мечтой, и он реализовал свою мечту. Он стал здесь достаточно известным, снимался в фильмах.
So, Yelena, the first question, of course, that everybody seems to be asking when I told them about this is, why Russia? Why was Russia a place for these folks in the 1930s?
At that time, in 1920s and 30s, the country was really changing, and everybody hoped it was changing for the best. So after the revolution, the Russian Revolution, the country was really building. So there was a new country where they announced equality for everybody, and they also announced that everybody could have a jobs, which actually happened. So at this point, these guys, a lot of people were coming to Russia, including a lot of white from all over the world, including white Americans, but of course, we all know that what was happening in America for black people at that time, which was segregation and racism and lynching, and at that time, those particular people who went to Soviet Union, they actually had nothing to lose. They were all educated people, and they had their dreams. They had their ideals. They wanted to go there just because they heard about this new country, and everybody was wondering what was actually happening. Not essentially they were all communists or anything. They were all different, all kinds of people, like, artists, engineers, and not really communists. A couple of them were communists and studying communists, in fact.
And now, so you talked about the 20s and the 30s, and then what happened after that? Was it a kind of a continuous sort of a glorious age for the African Americans and the other blacks who went to Russia, or did they kind of start having to deal with their own kinds of segregation in Russia at the time? Did it get tough for them?
Well, that wasn't that tough for them, not as tough as for the Russians. And what actually happened, they did get jobs, and some people who were going back and forth studying communism, and their mission was going back to America and actually spread communism among Americans. So those particular people who stayed, either they had white wives coming, they brought from here, or they married Russian women, so they already had their families. And the times were changing, yes, because if we take every year in 1930s, every year was different. It was still 1932, there was still a year of hope at that time, where American group, then first American, well, it's not the first American group, but it's like one big American group came making a film. It's called Black and White. And Langston Hughes, great American poet, was among them. And the film never happened. In fact, Langston Hughes didn't like the idea of too much propaganda at that time. And but at that time they were coming, and the times were changing. And even in 1936, they still did incredible Hollywood-type movie, very much propaganda movie. But then they did, maybe nowhere in the world it could happen, and it never happened. They put a little black boy, Jimmy, in 1936. He was maybe like 4 years old. And that boy was a part of the film, embraced by the white people.
Right, he was the son of a white Russian woman, right? Was that
he was the son of a white Russian woman, and in the film as well, and also in real life. And much later, only here, I found out that that boy actually was a son also of an American father.
Right.
And that's actually blew me off, because I had no idea about it. So 1936 is one thing, 1937 is, that's when purges came. And that's when everything started changing. And that's when Stalin said, you guys, either you stay here and denounce your American citizenship, or go back. So a lot of them people pretty much lost what to do, because a lot of them had their families, including whites and black. So anyway, some of them stayed, and they still had their jobs, and they were working for the Soviet Union, but they did see the changes.
Right.
And they did see that their friends, Russian friends, they made already Russian friends, they were disappearing. So they had a lot of disappointment as well.
Wow. So what about their children? You talked about the 30s and stuff when things changed. Were their children able to have successful lives?
Actually, yes. Their children are pretty successful. They still made it there. They still had great education. And our main characters, as we already just saw, my main characters will be two black Russians living in Russia, and both of them very successful. And one is especially successful, Yelena Demikovsky, who is a huge TV personality in Russia, and people know her. And,
Does she talk about any kind of segregation that she may have faced while in her growth as a reporter there?
She talks about her differences. Well, she felt like she was different. But at that time, she was so exotic, and they loved her. In fact, they wanted to touch her hair, they wanted to touch her head. So she never felt that segregation at all, in fact.
She did feel the other, but not in a negative way.
Not in a negative way, actually very much loved way. And in fact, they would say, sometimes they would say, you're so tan when we have to go tanning, how lucky you are.
So why was it that you wanted to make this film, Yelena?
The film is about really, it's connected with today life, because this is about ideals and the idealists and those people who believed really in a better life, and that's why they went, and they did, have pretty much better life.
All right. So tell me about when are you hoping that you could have this film out available for distribution and so forth?
So now we are in fundraising. We are looking for money to finish this film, and it's pretty much, what we need is to edit and give it to the distributor, so the distributor could cover the cost of the archives. We'll have archival footage, and of course archival, photo, pictures, stills, and everything. So, but that's our hope that when we finish, when our editing, we will give it to the distributors and let them see that.
All right. Well, Yelena, best of luck to you. Thank you so much for coming in, and I definitely look forward to seeing the film in its entirety when it's completed.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me again. Thanks.
Still to come on the show, highlighting the significance of the Black Latino experience. Before that, here are Abby Shola and Sarah Pizon to give us some other news in a new segment that we're calling Trending Now.
So, Abby, what's trending this week?
Well, the New York Immigration Coalition wants the Department of Education to provide better translation services to parents who don't speak English. They're calling the campaign Build the Bridge.
Wow, so just how bad is the problem, Abby?
Well, according to advocates, many parents are getting next to nothing when it comes to translation services. And in particular, the Bronx, they're not providing enough services for South Asian parents who need language services.
Do they have a plan of action in place?
Yes, the goal is to get Build the Bridge campaign integrated into the Department of Education's new school support system plans, which will be outlined by School Chancellor Carmen Farina by spring.
I hope it works out for them.
Me too.
There's another community that's struggling with translation services. Members of the Nepali-speaking community say the concept of IDNYC is still confusing to many of them.
Why is this community having problems?
Well, there's two problems. The first one is a language barrier. Brochures, guides, and applications have been translated into 20 different languages, but Nepali is not one of them. And then the second problem is that they just don't understand what the logistics or the benefits of the cards are.
What are the benefits?
Well, for a year, you get access, or you get a free membership to the city's cultural institutions. And on top of that, it gives undocumented immigrants the ability to enter state buildings and open up bank accounts.
How has the city responded to all of this?
Well, they're actually, they're happy to accommodate the community. They say they will, continue to translate documents. And City Councilman Danny Drum of Jackson Heights, which is where most of the Nepali community actually live, said he's willing to open up pop-up centers to educate the members of the community about the benefits of the card.
Wonderful. Yeah. We'll be keeping an eye out on that story, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
So how did one Brooklyn donut shop stay in business for 4 decades? They adopted one theory: cheaper by the dozen. At Mike's Donuts in Bay Ridge, get this, 1 donut sells for $1. A dozen sells for $7.50.
What? How are they able to sell for that cheap?
Well, the owner, Gus Neamontates, he's adopted a few things. He's told the Brooklyn Daily Eagle that he's very efficient. They don't waste any of their ingredients. And he also has a very good relationship with his vendors. And great New York City landlords. His parents owned the building, and his dad founded the shop in 1976.
That's a perfect New York City landlord situation right there.
Absolutely. It's definitely a family-run business. His mom works there, his sister works there, and other family members as well.
Well, we should go eat some of those donuts.
I want to.
Well, finally from us, there's a new Queens film series taking place that is giving foreign-born women a voice and showing what it means to be an immigrant within the 5 boroughs.
And who's putting this together?
Well, it's a nonprofit organization called New York Women in Film and Television, and it's part of the Cultural Immigrant Initiative, which basically features works of female immigrants and first-generation American filmmakers.
That's fascinating. What kinds of stories are being told?
Well, do you remember Alva Ambia? We profiled her last month. She started the New York Quechua Initiative.
I do. That was a great story.
Yeah, well, she's featured in the docuseries.
Wonderful for her.
Yeah.
So where can we see other screenings?
Well, the series will continue every month through June, and to find out where and when those will take place, you have to just log on to their website, and the website is called www.nywift.org.
Well, I'll definitely check that out.
Yeah.
And you guys should too. That's all we have for this week. Make sure you tweet us at Indie Sources, #Abby and Sarah.
And tell us what's buzzing in your community.
Thanks for staying tuned. The Caribbean Cultural Center African Diaspora Institute has already broken ground on a multi-million-dollar renovation of a landmark firehouse that will be its new home. The move to East Harlem, or El Barrio, is an opportunity for the center to be closer to the people that it hopes to serve. Sarah Pizon spoke to the Institute founder, Dr. Marta Morena Vega, and its Director of Education and Community Programs, Desiree Gordon, about the relocation and renovation.
Marta, Desiree, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
Marta, can you tell us a little bit about your cultural center?
Well, the Cultural Center was founded by me in 1976. And the idea of the Cultural Center is to make visible the contributions, the intelligence, the traditions of the Caribbean, of African descendants. And as we kept doing our work, it kept expanding to Latin America, Central America, obviously to the root in West and Central Africa, so that our work is global as well as local.
Why is it important to highlight the African culture and the Hispanic culture?
Because it's been excluded from the education of most of us. So most of us are miseducated, because when people are invisible that have contributed to the formation of their nation, to the formation of the global experience, you're not learning about the diversity that we reflect as a people. So to exclude Latin America is a greater part of the world. To exclude the Caribbean, to exclude Africa is a process of leaving a whole group of people invisible. And if we are to understand people's traditions, if we are to understand ourselves as a people, we have to understand the productivity and the contributions that we all have made, right, in forming the nation that we are in, and also the global experience that we are all part of now with the internet, with technology, right, so that we're communicating with different parts of the world. And it's important for us to know what those experiences and those contributions are and how they feed into our experience.
Can you tell us a little bit about some of the programs that you have?
Yeah, our programs include concerts, artists in the schools. We also do conferences, international conferences. We've done conferences in Nigeria and Brazil, in Cuba, as well as in Puerto Rico. And our exhibitions are fabulous, and our concerts are incredible because we have as a rule to bring the different African descendants from different cultural groups together in a performance or in an exhibition, so people could see the continuity of the traditions.
Great. Desiree, can you tell us maybe about what attracted, I guess, the organization to acquiring the Firehouse in Harlem?
The process for the Firehouse has actually been one that's been really protracted. This is going on for quite some time. And the city made the firehouses available at the behest of Melissa Mark Viverito, who was at the time a council member. And they wanted to make those firehouses available to cultural institutions. So the CCCADI entered a proposal, and we were selected from among many cultural institutions that submitted proposals to be able to inhabit that firehouse.
Wow. And Martin, what is this new location going to, does it provide any advantage to your previous location?
Well, our previous location on 58th Street was a small brownstone, which we loved dearly, and it was wonderful to us. Moving to 125th Street is extremely important because it places us back in the community that is our key community. On 58th Street, when we moved in, it was Hell's Kitchen. But as time went by, it's become a very high-end location. And we felt that that was not the work that we were doing. Our work is about servicing our community because we're so underserved in terms of cultural programming, cultural institutions, educational institutions. So we felt that the institution should be located where it's most needed and it can most service and have direct contact with our community. So 125th Street, El Barrio, is absolutely the place because it's an international location. There are Puerto Ricans, Mexicans, people from the English-speaking Caribbean, from the French-speaking Caribbean, and increasingly an African population. So that's like an international crossroads of the community that we serve.
What has been the community's response to you guys changing locations?
Well, so far, it's been absolutely wonderful, although we're still not in the firehouse, as I mentioned to you before. We're now, the process of renovation starts in March. So we've gotten our certificate to progress in terms of the renovation of the firehouse. So we're really 14 months away. But we've been doing exhibitions and programming in borrowed spaces because we see ourselves as servicing the city as a whole, as I said.
Yeah, tell us about some of the programs.
Well, as Dr. Vega mentioned, the being in this interim space has afforded us the opportunity to partner with a lot of ally institutions in the city and bring our work to the various homes of our communities throughout the city. The project that's currently at Weeksville is called After Afropolitan, and it's a project that includes an exhibition as well as a conference we just had, performances and artist talks. And it's a project that's sort of exploring the modern global African experiences, hoping to push the narratives around that experience beyond traditional frameworks and beyond how we typically imagine global African experiences.
Can you tell us a little bit about when all of this will open?
Well, the firehouse should be open, at least for us, in about 14 months. And we look forward to welcoming folk from all corners of New York City by around summer of next year. And we'll be welcoming you again to performances, to humanities programs, lectures, panel discussions, screenings, and lots of interactive workshops as well.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for inviting us. Thank you so much.
When we come back, a Brooklyn-based designer who's got Beyonce sweating his style. Finally from us, many independent fashion designers find that creating a successful brand can be an uphill battle. For Brooklyn-based designer Rubin Ruell, setting up shop online proved to be the winning formula. Abby Ishola spoke to him about his women's wear line and how social media and the interactive web shot him to success.
Reuben Reuel is working his dream job right from the comfort of his Brooklyn basement apartment. In 2010, the 29-year-old designer left his hometown in Virginia and moved to New York City with just his car, clothes, sewing machines, and a desire to make it in the fashion industry.
I was hungry. I was like, I have to stay in New York. There's nothing that's going to stop me.
There were a few bumps along the way. 2 years ago, after being fired from his job, he took his unemployment money and bought some wax-printed material, mostly used in African fashion. The trends of the 1970s and 80s, as well as many of the women in his life, inspired him to create a line called Domestics New York. Then he launched an online boutique on Etsy.com.
I knew that at that moment, that was a time where I needed to just do my own thing. And I just had a lot of faith, and I trusted and believed in God that I was going to be able to be successful.
He's been very successful. Ruel has seen his sales double since last year. According to his Etsy page, he has a total of over 2,000 individual sales of his merchandise. His customers are based all over the world, from the United States to places like Cyprus. He's also become a favorite among fashion bloggers and style mavens. One of his career highlights so far was when he saw Beyonce wearing his designs.
What has the Beyonce effect done for your line in terms of business and sales?
It has put me on the map as one of Beyonce's favorite designers. But for the most part, customers who have already been my customers prior to, it just enhanced my notoriety in the fashion world.
In addition to his exposure on social media, Ruel credits having a web-based store on an interactive platform like Etsy as a secret to his success. He says such sites are the future of fashion rather than the pomp of events like Fashion Week.
Fashion Week, it's an amazing time for people in the fashion industry and for buyers. But for me, because I sell directly to my customer base, it's not necessarily something that's lucrative for my business. And also, I really feel that it will be something that will fade after a while. We have to think about the future of fashion. With social media, we see everything very fast, even more so than like style.com.
Through all his accomplishments, Ruell remains focused on his more immediate goals. Though he's known for using bold wax prints, he plans to incorporate solid colored garments come next year. He's also considering selling his designs wholesale, but on a limited scale.
I don't want this clothing line to get so far out where it gets washed out. I want it to be tangible to myself. And also, I like the fact that customers are able to contact me directly. It's like you're speaking to the designer himself.
You're quite the humble designer. You don't like the bells and whistles?
No. I really love my customers. They are the ones who I think about when I'm designing. They're the ones I think about when I'm selling. And also how I present myself in the clothing line.
Abby Ashola, Independent Sources.
That's our show this week. Thanks for staying tuned. Till next time, be independent-minded.